Hello. My name is Lauren Hom, and as the title of my talk suggests, I do a lot of creative things. Most of you probably know me as a hand lettering artist, but I am also a muralist, a food stylist, and most recently, a trained chef. Thank you. So not too long ago, I found my diary from when I was 12 years old. I actually brought it with me today. I was shocked while I was thumbing through it because I found a list that I had written out of year by year. I had written out my life plan through the age of 30. What a little freak. And I wanted to read it to you. So, at 18, I was going to study marine biology at Cal State Long Beach. I'm from Southern California. At 21, I would meet the love of my life, date for exactly 2 years, and then get married. 23, first job. 24, buy a house. What? I would have 2 kids by the age of 28, and then become a stay-at-home mom by the age of 30. What a nice life. And now, I wasn't shocked to find this plan. Let's put this away. Because I had really just stolen this from my parents. I was mostly shocked to see that little me had planned so far in the future when we all know how much changes between then and now. So from a young age, I had just inherited all these ideas about who I should be and what I should want from the world around me. I inherited these from my parents, my friends, my community, and my peers. Sometimes explicitly, like my parents telling me, don't get tattoos, or sometimes implicitly, like them side-eyeing people with tattoos. And left unexamined, these shoulds can lead us astray. They can lead us to make decisions that veer us off course from who we are, oftentimes leading us somewhere that we don't recognize as someone we don't recognize. Today, I want to argue that doing what you want to do, not what you think you should do, is the key to having a fulfilling career. And now, this may seem very simple, but letting my creativity take the reins, not practicality, has been the key that has opened up every avenue for me, every door, every opportunity. And it takes work, and it oftentimes comes at a cost, but it is a skill that I am proud to have honed, and one that I think anyone can as well. And today I want to share some stories of some of my shoulds and how those have impacted my career and my journey, to inspire you to explore some of your own shoulds, and hopefully inspire you to create your way to yourself or back to yourself. So before we begin, it's important to give you some context for where my shoulds come from. So I spent my childhood equal parts bookish and artsy. Artsy is a given, but people also don't know that I have like a deep dork nerd side of me. The artsy part came from my mom. She was like a DIY queen, and this is like before you could look anything up on YouTube. I watched her hot glue gun seashells to all of our bathroom mirrors. For special occasions, she used to cut the letters of my name out of craft singles and serve them with crackers. And one summer, I watched in amazement as she painted the exterior of our house light blue. For context, she is 4'11". This gave me a deep appreciation for like design and art, and a belief that I could do anything that I put my mind to. The bookish part came from my dad and his side of the family. Born to not one, but 2 mathematicians. My dad studied economics and has been at the same job for the last 30 years. This side of the family doesn't ask you how big of a piece of cake you want. They ask you how many degrees you want, which is adorable. So you can steal that one if you'd like. And I wouldn't say that my dad is cheap. Love you, Dad. I know he's watching this right now. More that he is obsessed with getting a good deal. From a young age, he taught my brother and I how to get our money's worth at an all-you-can-eat buffet. And on his first date with my mom, he paid with a coupon. My childhood was spent bouncing between artsy activities and academic activities. I took dance classes at the rec center, but I was also a mathlete. I enjoyed drawing and painting just as much as I enjoyed long walks with my dad while he quizzed me on words to prepare for the spelling bee, which, as you can see in this newspaper photo, I did win. Thank you. However, when it came time to talk about serious stuff, like what I was going to major in college, my parents hesitated when I told them I was interested in pursuing illustration or maybe painting. They said, "Can you make money with that?" This is like a story as old as time. Like, "Can you make money with that? Like, should you consider something more practical?" And me at 18, I was like, well, they're my parents, they know best, maybe I should. And so I thought about it, and I landed on advertising because it seemed like this perfect mix of something creative, but also job security, because even at the age of 18, I understood that, hey, we live in America, and there's always stuff that needs selling. So 4 years later, I had made it to New York City and landed my very first big girl job as a junior art director at a New York City advertising agency. I remember my first week on the job, a coworker turned to me and said, "Make sure to write palm trees in all of your scripts, because if the client buys your idea, then you get to travel to a tropical location to shoot that commercial." And I said, "Yes, please sign me up. This is going to be great." Fast forward 7 months, I was returning to my little apartment at 3 in the morning, dead tired and defeated from searching for stock photography and putting together decks because we were working on a pitch. Sorry if anyone has also had that experience. I hadn't had time to grocery shop that week because we had been working so hard on this pitch. I don't even know what it was for. And I opened up the fridge, and all that was there was a pack of ravioli, the kind that you need to boil for a couple minutes. I was so tired that I ripped open the package and decided to take a bite of the ravioli raw. And I slumped down onto the floor and decided to have that for dinner. So there I was, 23, miserable, eating a pack of uncooked ravioli for dinner. And I thought to myself, this was supposed to be my job. How am I supposed to do this for the rest of my life? This was supposed to be my perfect mix of practical and creative. It took some cold, hard ravioli to hit me with the cold, hard truth that if the job wasn't going to change, I needed to make a change. Luckily, I had a lifeline in the form of a project that I had started my senior year of college. Daily Dishonesty was a series of little white lies that I hand-lettered and published to Tumblr. Shout out. Thank you. And I had picked up hand lettering as a hobby while studying advertising, just to give me something else to do, like while making ads all day, because who wants to do that? And I found it really soothing to just draw letters all day, because it's kind of the antithesis of modern communication. And I was publishing these things online, even though I wasn't really that good at it yet, just because it felt nice to track my progress and have something fun to share. The idea was inspired just by an inside joke between me and my girlfriends. And this, in turn, circulated my lettering work around the internet and started to get me freelance projects and eventually even landed me a book deal. So even with this wind at my sails and a desire to leave my advertising job, I noticed another should swoop in and stop me dead in my tracks. I remember thinking to myself, I'm 22 at the time, I thought, oh shoot, I'm supposed to stay at this job for a year so my resume doesn't look bad. And so I said, okay, I think I can wait it out for another 4 months. That's not so bad. And I remember talking to my friend Justin Genak, who had previously left advertising to start his own business. I told him my plan over coffee, and he said, "But wait, does your advertising resume matter if you don't want another job in advertising?" And I said, "Oh, shit, yeah, it doesn't matter." And I realized that I had been using my full-time brain to try to solve a freelance problem, and I had been so focused on trying to remain employable, which was very important to my dad, that I had forgotten the bigger picture, which is that I didn't want to be working this job anymore. I wanted to try my hand at lettering. So I put in my 2 weeks' notice very shortly after. So, thank you. Early on in my freelance life, for the first couple years, I almost exclusively got hired to do that same colorful, dimensional, like lettering style that I was known for with Daily Dishonesty. It's kind of like a dress for the job you want situation. And this was exciting for me because it was validating to know that I could get paid to do lettering after quitting my full-time job. However, I started to feel like a bit of a one-trick pony after doing this over and over and over. And I started to wonder if I should explore something else. I felt a pull, I wanted to try other things, but in the back of my mind, I thought, well, I'm so lucky that this is even working as freelance. Maybe I should stick to this plan because this is working, so I should just keep doing more of it. And I was noodling on this decision, and I just didn't quite know what to do. And what I've come to realize after many years of freelancing, and I've heard this over and over in talks at design conferences, is what is good for business is oftentimes bad for creativity. And what I mean by that is what's good for business, repetition, predictability, like scalability, is oftentimes at odds with what's good for creativity, like exploration, like expansion, pieces that don't quite fit together yet. And these often butt up against each other, and it feels like a problem to be solved. Like my little nerd, like mathlete brain is like, okay, this is a problem that I can solve. But it's actually more helpful for me to approach this as a choice to be made. It's more of a, which one do I need more of right now? Which one is more important? You need both to obviously run a freelance creative business. But at this moment, I realized, oh, I would like to expand my creative work. And if I'm going to have a sustainable creative career that's going to span a long time, I really need to make sure that I am keeping my creative spark alive. And now that I was freelancing and in full control of my creative career, I was learning this very important lesson, that keeping yourself engaged in your creative work is part of the job description. I used to think that it was a nice to have, but it is actually a must have. I realized that it was sheer luck that when I was 20, I did Daily Dishonesty, and it ended up being a lifeline for me to use at 22. That was going to save me from a job that I didn't end up liking. And I realized at that moment that, oh, shoot, it's actually a better idea for me to try more things and to put more pots on the stove and expand than to just stay in one lane because that's what's good for business. And so I decided to slowly incorporate new mediums, new skills, and new ideas into my portfolio, one every year or so, every year or two, as to not overwhelm my portfolio. For example, I wanted to try my hand at chalkboard lettering. I figured it's still lettering, but it's a new medium. And I started this project called We'll Letter for Lunch, where I went around to restaurants in New York and pitched them my services as an amateur chalkboard lettering artist. I said, hey, I will letter whatever your daily special is in exchange for whatever I write on the board. So it started with these A-frame menu boards with just like the daily special. And eventually it went to larger menu boards and chalk murals, which of course I charged for. I am my father's daughter. After about 6 months of this Letter for Lunch project, I remember getting an email in my inbox from someone at Skillshare saying, hey, you lettered a chalkboard for our CEO. Do you want to teach a class? And I thought to myself, I don't think that happened. And so, of course, I Googled CEO Skillshare, and I remembered, I was like, oh, yeah, I do recognize that guy's face. So it turns out that back in 2014, the CEO of Skillshare was helping his friend run a New Orleans-style soup and sweet tea stand on the weekends. Even CEOs have passion projects. And I had given him a flyer, and I had done a chalkboard for them. And it turns out that they had been looking for someone to teach a chalk lettering class for a while, and now that they had found me, they wanted to work with me. And so I decided to chat with them, and we landed on a chalk mural class. And little did I know that this Letter for Lunch project would lead me to designing a chalkboard for the CEO of Skillshare that would lead me to teach my very first online class with like a huge platform. So I said yes, and we landed on a chalk mural course. I got a peek behind the curtain at how an online class gets made, and it was really thrilling to see people enroll in a class and make chalk murals of their own. As an added bonus, when we were wrapping up the filming of the class, someone from the team at Skillshare said, oh, hey, by the way, do you paint murals too? And this is how I got my very first mural commission. Granted, it was dinky and technically in between two bathrooms. Doors are the bathrooms. But it was real, and it was my very first commission from a real client. And just like that, I got my first mural, and with the next one, it was a little bit bigger and a little bit further away from the bathroom. And the next one, a little bigger, further away from the bathroom. And over the years, and many murals later, I was able to look up and realize that I was a muralist. So murals were something that I had always wanted to get into, but didn't quite know how. It felt like something that was a little bit harder to get into than lettering, because I could just pick up a pen and have paper. But with murals, I was like, well, I gotta find a wall, and it just seemed like too much, so I didn't bother. And what my chalkboard lettering project had done for me, like with murals, was something that my friend Andy J. Pizza likes to call preparing for your big break. And what that means is you're taking slow little baby steps towards a big opportunity that you just don't know about yet. And what he argues is you actually don't want your big break too early because you're unprepared for it. If I had gotten that email from Skillshare saying, hey, do you want to paint a mural in our office, back in 2012 or something, there's no way I would have known how to do that. But with the Letter for Lunch project, I didn't know it was going to lead to chalk murals. I was just trying to do A-frame boards for free food and to build a little bit of a portfolio. But what it ended up doing was leading me to doing chalk murals, which set me up perfectly to do painted murals. And so little by little, you're building your skills, and eventually you will be offered the big break, and then you have finally leveled up to do the thing. And in fact, I had even realized that the 4 years I had spent studying advertising and even my brief stint at the agency had set me up to even do the Letter for Lunch project. When I left advertising, I felt like I had wasted all of my time doing that. But in reality, I had actually been using the skills that I had learned in advertising to market myself. Instead of selling products, I was selling my skills. I was using quippy little headlines, and I was packaging things up into a little campaign, but instead of products, it was to market my chalk lettering skills. So the unintended consequence of doing all of this fun work, like my Letter for Lunch project and all these passion projects over the years, is that I would book a lot more work, and so I was extremely booked for the next couple years. And because of this, a lot of work came in, and I was saying yes to everything. This is where I feel like my dad teaching us how to get our money's worth at the buffet was starting to come into my brain. And so I would just say yes because it felt like too good of an opportunity to pass up. And so I think back to times where my former agent would call me. He'd say, hey, we have a rush job. It's a lot of money. You're going to have to work the weekend. Do you want to take it? And the inside joke we used to have was, like, are you willing to shave off a year of your life? I'm like really ashamed to say that now, but we'd laugh, and I'd say like, sure, why not? I also began teaching my own online classes, producing them and hosting them and like marketing them. After a business coach told me, hey, I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Like, you have an audience, and I think you should teach. And she wasn't wrong, because I started doing it, and it was very lucrative because of the scale of the internet. But after 20 or so course launches and like email campaigns and whatnot, even though I was good at it, I was starting to burn out from it because that's not why I started my business in the first place. And I had even hired a small team at this point to help me with like the overflow of work. And this was not all bad. I was doing what I thought I should do. This is the best case scenario as an artist, like running a business, or at least I thought in my mind. But left unchecked, this was going with the flow had led me in a direction that wasn't necessarily a choice of my own. And I realized that my days weren't really spent making things that I wanted to make. They were spent answering emails, and they were spent strategizing on how to make more money, which, listen, money is good, but I missed making things with my hands. So after a couple more years of doing this, I found myself on the couch at 3 a.m., glass of red wine in hand, Googling, why does art matter? After almost a decade after the ravioli moment on the floor in my kitchen, I had found myself burnt out, like uninspired, not knowing what I wanted to make. And the routine of running a business had left me out of touch with any of my like creative desires. I just felt completely lost and aimless and not knowing what I wanted to do next. I had said yes to too many like good opportunities that weren't necessarily like my own decisions, and I think after too many little like shoulds, I had moved away from doing what I wanted to do. And that's the problem. I think that we live in a world that offers us like lots of shiny objects and money and treats in exchange for our money, or in exchange for our time and our labor and our attention. And none of us are immune to this, but the system doesn't care about our pleasure or our joy or our humanity, and so we have to be the ones to advocate for that for ourselves, and I had forgotten this. And if you just go with the flow, like I had, market forces will push you towards efficiency. Like, best case scenario as a working artist, you end up almost getting pigeonholed because you'll get known for a style and get asked to do that style over and over and over again, or the thing that makes you money. And so you end up doing more of that, but at a certain point, you need to be the one to get back in the driver's seat and decide, okay, I'm gonna try a new style, or I'm gonna do a new thing, because you're in charge of keeping your creative spark alive. And creativity is just not efficient all the time. Like, it's messy and it's human, and that's what makes it beautiful and valuable. So yeah, years after that ravioli incident, I had found myself burnt out, and I knew I wanted to make things with my hands again, and that was the only clue that I had. And so I thought back to, okay, let's start there. So even in my busiest business parts or moments, I was still working on projects here and there. So I began to gather a collection of images of just what I had made over the years. And I ended up seeing a through line to all of this. I noticed that even with my pom-pom crafts or cookies or baking or jewelry making, the through line was food. And I started thinking about, okay, if food is the thing, it reminded me of a story or of a thing that my friends and I used to talk about of, okay, if you won the lottery and you didn't have to work, what would you do? And my answer for like the last decade had been, I would go to culinary school and host like fabulous dinner parties for my friends and my family. And so I started thinking about enrolling in culinary school because I realized I didn't have to win the lottery to do that. I could actually just plan for it. So as I got closer to enrolling and thinking about putting a deposit down, I started to get a little bit nervous and worry if I was blowing everything up for no good reason, because it felt like there was something to lose, because there actually like kind of was. I was 32, not 22, and I had gotten more comfortable, and I had more responsibilities. Like, inevitably, I realized that as I got older, life was handing me more big girl responsibilities. And the same way that my friends and I joked about like muscles getting tighter and joints getting like creaky, I noticed like an internal stiffening in myself too. And so I started to wonder if I should do this. And I remember my dad giving me a call and saying, "Hey, so I know you want to go to culinary school. Have you considered cooking every day at home for a year and saving the money instead?" And this question jolted me to clarity because it was so ridiculous. And I was like, what in the Mr. Krabs type of question is this? But it reminded me that the point of culinary school clearly wasn't to save money or even to make money. It was that I needed to try something new, that I wanted to try something new, and it was going to be for me. And it brought me back to thinking about how I wanted to go to art school to study illustration or painting, and my parents said, "But how will you make money? How will you get your ROI?" And how I eventually found my way back to doing what I wanted to do, like making art. And how I even was able to make a living from it, and how that was kind of like winning the lottery in and of itself. And so I decided to enroll in culinary school. After I got off the phone with my dad that day, I put my deposit down. And I decided to go. I eventually did end up going to school and began blending all of my interests and passions together. And now I have been blending food into my design work. Going into school, I knew I was not going to go work in the culinary industry yet because the joke I've been telling my friends is like, I like sitting for my job for most of the time. But I really wanted to bring more like food work into my design work. I've been creating things like editorial stuff. This is a shoe that I've made 100% out of potatoes for the Washington Post, or cheese and crackers. I even designed a baguette-shaped nail, or using dried spices and oranges to make a Target gift card, or drop caps out of real citrus. And as a creative person, or even like as designers in this room, right? I think we often think that we're more immune to like the shoulds, like we're more able to do things our own way. But for me, I know that like I'm not immune to them. Like we're all steeped in the same culture. And it's similar to like a parent dissuading a child from pursuing art in service of a more profitable college major. But as all of us in this room know, the way that we work and live is constantly changing, especially now more than ever. What worked then doesn't always work now. I mean, I got my start on Tumblr. And so why not try things your own way and mix things up and do things differently? For me, it's pursuing lots of different interests in a world that tells you to specialize and find a niche. For you, it might be taking your time in a world that tells you to go faster, or maybe it's specializing in an industry that tells you to try to do too many things. Whatever it is, do more of what you want, and I promise you, you'll find your way. Or don't. I would never tell you what you should do. Thank you.